Hello and welcome to another edition of History After Hours podcast. My name is Kevin Pumphrey, and with me, as always, is
Ron Franklin.
And it's been a while. So I think we actually recorded a live podcast in front of the students at the very end of last year in December. And they asked a lot of questions, and it was like a 6-hour podcast. And because of some production complications, we have not released that yet. It might release, it might not. But the last one, it was me, you, and Pierce the day after the election, and I think we were all in shock. And so this is going to be, we haven't recorded one in a while, so a lot has happened, and we're just going to kind of reflect on some of the high points. And
Today's February 9th,
yes,
2017.
And so we're all just kind of sitting back and watching all this stuff go on. It seems like every day there's a new something huge.
Right. The cabinet picks is something that's been heavily in the news. You know, we can go off on several tangents, but the two probably pretty controversial ones that we've seen in the past couple of days is Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos, and now last night they confirmed Jeff Sessions as Attorney General. And so I'm interested to see where those things go, especially with DeVos, because we're in education, to see if her plans for what education, you know, she got some real clear ideas on what it should be, what our lives may turn into. You know, do we change up a lot of the funding? There's all kinds of questions that we have about her.
Right. She's just, the whole cabinet in general, it looks like, and this is just the gut reaction, was he's picking people that seem to go in contest or protest or opposite of the actual department that they're in charge of.
I don't understand the strategy, honestly, unless you're trying to. Are there people with money who want to see major change and they've been blocked up to this point because they haven't had enough power in the Senate or whatever it happens to be? But you get people who are very clearly sort of, they want to change it dramatically. And now all of a sudden we've got a role, there's a lot of momentum, I think, for those kind of things. So when you get people like Rick Perry, who's in charge of the energy department now, who, when he was running for president, said that was one of the agencies he wanted to take out. It seems counterintuitive unless you think that there's a larger agenda at work, which is to try to get rid of some of these commissions, or at least some of the control factors that these agencies have, so that you can let other people run out and make money and do things in a different way. That's kind of the way I'm.
Yeah, it seems like every cabinet pick is either runs in opposition to the department they're heading. They are unqualified in a traditional way. They don't have the background or the history like Ben Carson.
Mm-hmm. What about Pruitt for EPA? A guy who fought against the EPA for his entire, basically his adult career.
Right.
He's brought lawsuit after lawsuit against them. And so there's a lot of concern about folks. Yeah, right.
And Sessions, who's had a sketchy past, and I've never seen such heated confirmations. I mean, when the vice president has to unbreak a tie.
Right.
When's the last time that happened for a cabinet pick?
Never. This is the first time they said it.
Okay, well there you go. I mean, we have some contentious. Democrats are digging in their heels to the best of their degree. They
can't block. There's no way to block you. There's no possible way. And unless you get a couple of recruits, which they kind of did with DeVos. But then you saw, like you said, Pence comes in and breaks the tie, and it's tight. If they had one more vote or two more votes, things could be a little different. But they just really, I think everybody's going to vote party line.
Well, let me say this, because I know in our immediate after election podcast, all three of us were pretty much in agreement that Trump wasn't going to be able to do anything that he campaigned on. Well, I'm here to say he's tried. With the wall, with the Muslim ban, I've never seen, and he has not changed. There has never been a pivot from Trump. From the day he announced his candidacy and coming down the escalator and we're going to do this and this, he hasn't really changed at all. And even now that he's president, he hasn't changed. It's exactly what we elected.
Don't you think that he saw the election as some sort of confirmation that he should remain who he is and he doesn't need to pivot? I mean, I think that his core supporters really expect that in him. And I think that he's not really worried about what everybody else thinks, the naysayers are the ones who want him to change. He's pretty determined to continue to be who he is. And since he has a tremendous approval rating amongst his core constituency and then Republicans sort of in general, the last poll I saw from like Gallup poll and this and that, I mean, he's got like 90% approval rating amongst Republicans. And so I don't think that anybody's going to go away from that because they're afraid that he has that kind of popular support and they're going to and they're going to maybe have problems getting reelected if he goes against them, because he can just Twitter out about you and you'll get people turning on you.
Now, that's another issue we probably need to hit. But I did hear somebody say that Trump can't change. He's exactly as president as he was in business. Somebody who just goes right at you, shoots for the moon, and if you don't get it, you land on the roof at least. He just goes full tilt to try to get. It's the bully tactics that we saw during the campaign.
Why would he need to change, though? Honestly, I mean, there's nothing there to make him pivot.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody's there telling him you have to do this, and there's no pressure. Like, the only thing we've got that could cause pressure on him is the court system trying to figure out about the ban that he's put in place, the travel ban. But even that, he's questioning the legitimacy of the courts, whether or not they're political, whether or not they're being trusted. And he said yesterday or the day before that it depends on how they rule, how he'll consider. Like, if you vote for me or in favor of my policies, then you're fair. If you vote against me, then you're obviously biased and corrupt, and you're part of the old school system that we're trying to get rid of. And that's his message, and people swallow that.
How crazy is it? Just the last 3 weeks has been. Just yesterday, was it Ivanka and the whole
right?
They wouldn't sell. What's the brand? Nordstrom.
Yeah.
And he comes out and criticizes. The president of the United States is criticizing a business for not selling a Trump product, that's a conflict of interest.
On his official POTUS Twitter account. By the way, he put it on his private one, but then he retweeted it on his POTUS account. And so how is that not a conflict of interest when you are trying to manipulate the marketplace in a particular company whose stock did drop a little bit after he criticized them, and they've kind of rebounded a little bit because people are supporting them back. If they make a business decision that he doesn't like, he's supposed to divest himself from the business side of this and run the country as an impartial. Like, you're here for the country. Don't pick and choose which companies you think can succeed based on your personal finances or your family's finances. And he called it an attack on her. And how could it be an attack on her when I've got this kind of just from several news sources that they were already bending back on whether or not they were going to keep her products online because they weren't selling as well. And so it was a business decision. But
what about the ban on Muslims? There were several countries that were ignored, like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and the thing I heard, and according to the Washington Post, he has Trump either buildings or might build in hotels in Saudi Arabia.
I would be okay.
I don't know if that's proven.
I would be more okay. Let me say it this way: with this travel restriction, if they were really forthcoming about why certain countries aren't on the list, right? Like you just said.
Yeah.
Why isn't Pakistan on the list? Why isn't Saudi Arabia on the list? Why isn't let's see. Is Egypt on the list? Egypt's not on the list.
No.
So, is there? If your concern is the rationale that they've given is that these countries have been identified with potential terrorist cells, and therefore that they are hotspots and need to be watched, which I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily have a problem with the idea of watching and vetting. Okay. But if you're watching places with hotbed terrorism actions and people who have actually threatened us, then these other countries not being on the list don't make sense.
Turkey, Saudi Arabia.
So I don't get that. And then you say, well, we didn't put these other Muslim countries on there because, like the other Muslim majority countries, Indonesia, for example, because they don't pose a threat and this and that. So they can try to get around the idea that it's not really a Muslim ban. But the whole thing just doesn't make sense, even from the argument that they're giving. If your main concern is safety and security of the American people, then there should be more countries on that list than just these 7. And of these that he does have on the list, which apparently were on some sort of watch list that Obama had, the vetting process already takes place, and nobody from any of those countries has ever come here and killed anybody.
He makes it sound in his tweets like they're pouring in now. We better act before it's over.
Right, but that's hyperbole. That's not
true.
What's happening.
And he came out and said if something does happen, we're blaming this judge.
Right.
And
so do you think it's just blatant fear-mongering then to try to get what he wants? Because
that's what he's done.
If you say something long enough, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid every single day, be afraid, and people get that reinforced in their heads that they ought to be afraid. And as soon as something happens, he's going to say, ha, I told you so. See, here's the proof. And so it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
But is this Muslim ban not exactly what terrorist groups want us to do? They want us to make it us against them. If they want to make it Christian versus Muslim.
Right.
We need, and I think most of the intelligent people that I listen to on this topic say the key to defeating ISIS or this terrorist group is really to get moderate Muslims to lead the way, because no one is suffering from ISIS or the terrorist groups more than Muslims.
Right.
They suffer way on a scale like nobody's business compared to us. We don't suffer, and you can bring up 9/11 and all that, but the Muslims are every day suffering from terrorists. And so the way to reform that is going to be from inside the Muslim community. And if we're throwing up bans and we're not even letting these moderate Muslims come back, or even American citizens with
or we're splitting up
visas
families. I mean, you're right. You can see how they would be if you are going to keep their nationalist spirit for our nation alive. People who want to come here, people who already do live here, want to bring other family members and loved ones here. Then this does not help that, because what you're doing then is illustrating that you believe that there are others, that they themselves count as the others, quote unquote,
Wow.
and that then disqualifies them for lots of rights and privileges, perhaps. And if nothing else, it just demoralizes their national spirit, and the patriotism that they feel for our country can wane, because that's something that, I mean, you're looking for somebody who's going to support you. Nationalism is based on the idea that you have a unifying factor. The American dream is a unifying factor for us. Anybody can come here and do this. And I think that we're really undermining that element of unity and togetherness, and instead we're dividing people out. And I think that is dangerous, and that is probably what extremists around the world would love to see happen, is that we start dividing amongst ourselves and fighting, and then it turns into something that they can use to their advantage in recruiting people, even if we don't get somebody who say that they actually join ISIS, but the fact that they would no longer support our actions or encourage people to continue to support us around the world. Like, just those things, just those little subtle changes in attitude can really be problematic.
And you could go with Latin America. Obama, has spent the last 8 years trying to improve relationships with Latin America. And I listened to something on this the other day, and that seems to have all turned. And I heard a Latin American person say, look, when you say Mexico, even if you live in Venezuela, we think when Americans say Mexican, they mean all of us. And so there is starting to build this resentment. So you're seeing countries around the world starting to look at us in a different way. It's going to be interesting when we go on our trip this year to Germany and Poland, and to see if there's any difference in how we're perceived or received in other countries as compared to the past.
You may have some explaining to do.
Yeah.
We saw that last year in Paris and London. The people were asking us, is this what America is doing? Is this what you're doing? And most of us were like, he says some things, and some people like it, but a lot of people are really questioning it heavily. And then what bothers me too, I think that I hope changes, but I don't know that will, is the idea of trying to silence people that are criticizing him. That's just historically dangerous, to not allow criticism, or to say anybody who criticizes me is non-patriotic, and you go off and viciously attack them. Just like, I mean, if you convince people that disagreement is the same thing as dissent or maligning the leadership, then all of a sudden you're setting yourself up for things like Committee of Public Safety and secret police forces and more censorship and less right to speak out. And I mean, we've studied enough history to see that go in a dark direction, and it kind of starts like this. And I'm not making any predictions. I'm just saying that it bears to watch when you tell people that the only truth you can get is from this one singular source, which is your leadership, and you can't trust anybody else. Automatically, everybody's wrong. The courts are wrong. The police system is wrong. The military is wrong, unless they agree with him, and then all of a sudden they're brilliant, right? So
And he also criticizes everyone with one big exception. He has not said one derogatory thing about Putin.
No, even when this was a big controversy last week too, when Bill O'Reilly from Fox News was interviewing him and said, well, Putin is a killer. And he goes, well, you don't think that we are? I mean, really, if you take those comments, you think that we're so innocent?
That's a false equivalence.
It is, but let's do a comparative. If any other president, I'm just going to focus on Obama, let's go back to Reagan. Would Reagan have ever said, well, America's not so innocent? No.
Right.
And people would have condemned him for that. How dare you? And then, but let's bring it all the way up to Obama, because he's the most recent. If President Obama had stood before the American people in an interview and said, well, America's got some problems too, they would have called for his head. I mean, politically.
Yeah.
I mean,
we have recognized since the very beginning Trump has played by a different rule book. He's
Mm-hmm.
played by a different standard, and it seems like we cannot even focus
But I don't think he's ignorant. I think that he's.
Oh, no, I don't either.
I think he's doing this on purpose. I think he's proud.
How long can you stay on one controversial thing because something else is coming 2 days later? That's happened all campaign.
Well, but don't you think that it's partly this too? Because he throws something egregious out there every single day, and the media just picks up on it, and they go and they go and they go and they talk about how dare he say this, and what do you think about that? What do you think about that? In the meantime, nobody's really watching what Congress is doing behind the scenes, with shutting down the ability for the people inside the EPA to talk to the news people. A complete silencing of the department, changing the regulations on whether or not certain industries can pollute certain waterways. Things like that need to be watched because they're changing the rules and regulations on several things about funding for, or at least they're trying to. They're promoting bills to defund some groups that are helping women. I'm not talking about Planned Parenthood, but I mean like I can't remember the name of it now, but it was a group that helps battered women, that kind of stuff, and they're going to take money away from that kind of thing.
There's a bunch of stuff that's been overturned that we didn't even really hear about because we're focused on crowd size at the inauguration.
Yeah. So I'm saying, do you think that he's like dangling shiny object in front of everybody so that they can be busy doing that? You be the he kind of bulldozes the way through and causes chaos, and people focus on that chaos and they miss the real strategies that are going on behind. I think that's and I will say, and my criticism of the media is that they follow that. They just work on his stuff and they don't talk about the other stuff that's going on. And most people, I think there's so much noise, people just end up going, I can't even handle it anymore, and they just tune out, which then allows them to do other things as well. So, and again, I don't think that there's a real conspiracy going on, but I think that there is definitely an agenda.
Well, we're just living in crazy times. We're dealing with our president that is, we just don't know from moment to moment what's going to happen. But he's been consistent. He's been consistently different, and he's been outrageous. And there's been 100 things, and I'm not even making this up, at least 100 things that he's done that would have disqualified anybody else.
Right. Do you think his celebrity status
I think
allows him to get away with it?
I think it's that. I think it's the regressive left over the last 2 to 3 years that's been, outraged about every little thing, and that has given voice to this silent group that's millions of people that wanted change.
Have you seen that when people complain about Trump, the supporters end up saying, "Well, you're just mad about the election," and I wonder how long they're going to hold on to that.
We won.
Yeah, okay. Everybody agrees that you won, and maybe there are people who are still torn up about that. But at the same time, we're talking about real things that are happening right now that have nothing to do with the election. The election happened. Now we're dealing with these things. But they always go back to that. Well, you just got to get over it because the election. He's the president. This, that. But that doesn't give him license to do every single thing that he wants to do.
Yeah, and at some point,
right now it kind of seemingly has.
At some point, he's going to have to produce results. I mean, if he doesn't improve life for middle class or lower class Americans, at what point do people go, okay, maybe this isn't working? And I'm not saying he's not going to do that. Obviously, he is focused on bringing jobs back into America, or at least companies coming back in. But I wonder, people at some point have to see the change. And I know he's removing all these regulations, and a lot of businesses are very happy about that. Mm-hmm. I just wonder if his followers, is there a point that they would turn? I mean, the Republicans all lined up pretty much, with the exception McCain has been outspoken and a few others. But
even they bow to it, though. I mean, he complains, and I respect John McCain. I think that he would have been a decent president.
I do.
But at the same time, that angst that he shows about some of the policies that the president's put in place really only goes so far because he ends up lining up with everybody else. And I just wonder, I don't know. I mean, I hope that he's sincere in saying, I'll stand up against this president if I need to.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you.
I haven't seen anybody do it yet. Not really.
I started watching 2 days ago, and I think I mentioned this to you yesterday or something, that I started watching that Trump documentary, basically the biggest political upset in history or whatever. I forgot all the stuff that was said between Cruz and Rubio, and And somebody said, one of the interviewers said, "Look, you've been labeling people lately. You came up with Lying Ted and Little Marco." Said, "Are you going to come up with something for Hillary? Do you have something for Hillary?" And he goes, "I've got something. I'm not going to release it yet." And of course, now we know that's Crooked Hillary. Yeah. But it's funny how all that, and then what Cruz said, the big conflict they had, how he wouldn't endorse him at the convention, and then he did, and then eventually did, and how Christie, moved over. But man, the stuff that was said, I just completely forgot how cutthroat all that was. And then he won. And I remember the night of the election, me and you were leaving school, and I know Landry came in and asked us our opinion on who was going to, and we said, or my opinion was, I think Hillary will walk away with it. I didn't think it was going to be that close. I figured by 10:30, 11 o'clock, we would know and, go to bed. And I just was complete, once again, just complete. It's a whole different ball game. And
but even with that, I think that you were just, somewhere deep inside, you kind of felt that it really had a strong potential to be this and not her.
Yes, I mean,
and it became more and more evident as the night went on.
Right. Yeah. As the state started to fall his way, eventually you're going, okay, well, this is, but I was still shocked. I'm still shocked.
I really didn't anticipate the turn that we saw on some traditional Democratic strongholds. Yeah. That's what kind of threw me, because I knew that in certain areas it'd be really tight. I knew that he had a lot of support out in rural areas. I did see that coming, but I didn't see that there would be an underwhelming response in some of the again, Democratic areas that were traditionally going to vote for whoever the candidate was, and they just didn't turn out in force like people thought they would, and the other side did. So, like I said, I get why it happened, but at the same time, he has not received a mandate, even though I think that he thinks he has.
Well, what if I told you 2 years ago, and this is something I wanted to talk about, because it's not getting hardly any attention anymore. Now, I know his tax returns, he never released those. That's going away.
He's not going to either.
He's not going to.
Yeah, we're not going to.
But there's another issue. If I'd have told you 2 years ago that our election would have been hacked by the Russians and manipulated it so one candidate would win, and the Russians are also, at the base of hacking the Democratic emails and releasing them to hurt that candidate.
Apparently they hacked the Republicans too, but they just didn't release it.
Right. So if I told you that a foreign government, and specifically the Republicans, hacked our election in the United States, if you would have told me that, I would have been like, "There's no way. That's nearly going to war. We would have to have military." Yeah, a conflict over that.
What gets me about that story, and Republicans have always sort of prided themselves in being the Reagan Republicans, or at least in my lifetime, and saying, we're tough on Russia, and we're tough on communism, and we're tough on authoritarianism, and we can feel good about ourselves being patriots and stand up against that. And we were willing to take certain losses in our country. There were contingency plans in case there was nuclear war, and it was always us against them. And I think that our working relationship with them is something, but at the same time, to just distance yourself from the reality that they were heavily trying to influence what we were doing, and then just to not fully and openly criticize the commander-in-chief, who just sort of sidesteps that and goes, well, everybody does bad things. How do Republicans sit with themselves and really sleep comfortably at night, knowing that they're kind of betraying that old school, you can say America first, but are you really showing it? I don't know. And not that I think that we need to go to war with Russia, but at the same time, where's the outrage?
Yeah, it seems like that would be the issue that wouldn't go away. I mean, we would have to get to the bottom of that. Is it because there's no real smoking gun and we can't just post, we know exactly what happened? I mean, we're getting intel. It seems like from all sources, everybody's saying, the Russians are probably 90+% chance behind it. I don't know why that's not a bigger issue. And I know it was mentioned in the debates even before the election. And it also coincides with the weirdness how Trump won't criticize Putin. It's just all weird.
Even why wouldn't just ordinary Americans be upset about it?
I know. Not just politically. Do we want a foreign government to influence our elections? I don't think so.
Or do you think most people don't think that it wasn't really anything at all, and so therefore we don't care about it? I wonder. I mean, is there really just?
I don't know.
I wonder if there's that lackadaisical attitude about just international relations. They talk a lot about immigration, this and that, and saving American jobs, but this ought to be more concerning to more people. Mm-hmm. Just, I mean, regardless of how it may have influenced the election, I can't say one way or the other. But the fact that they tried should bother more people.
It's also something we need to talk about real quick is tweeting. Now, Obama tweeted. I guess he's the first president to actually have a Twitter account and all that. And it seemed that wasn't even an issue at all because everything he tweeted was very measured and, he's not going to just...
It was filtered.
But now we have a president who can directly talk to the people. He can say exactly what's on his mind.
Right.
We assume it's coming straight from him with no filter. Now, I would always think, well, that's a good thing. You hear directly from your president.
It's intriguing because it's new and it seems fresh because it just seems like it's hot off the press, his press.
And I'm not saying it's a bad idea because I follow him on Twitter. I want to see what he has to say. But, of course, most Republicans and even Democrats, everybody's kind of wanting him to stop, because he just does, it's this knee-jerk.
Do you think that he will end up saying something? Because I wonder, now that they're trying to debate out this ban, do the courts take what he said at the same time that they release the ban? Do they take what he said on Twitter
as
evidence to decide what the intent was behind the order? I wonder did those things come back and haunt him? Because he does not
that Giuliani interview, they used that when Giuliani said, he called me up and said, it was a Muslim ban. How do we make it legal?
Talk about that?
Mm-hmm. That was admissible.
I don't know. I mean, I just wonder if that's...
We just live in such a... It's
new, yeah.
It seems like the last 10 or 15 years have been kind of the same-ish. As far as media, as far as presidents, as far, Bush, Obama. There was differences, obviously. But we just went into a whole new area that's never been... The fake news stuff, the way that the press has been treated, the way the Justice Department's been treated, the
court system,
the tweeting randomly and could get us,
How do you attack a federal judge and call him a so-called judge? I saw on Fox News today at lunch that they're trying to pass legislation to break up the Ninth Circuit court system and to create an 11th Circuit. I think from a conservative standpoint, they believe the Ninth Circuit is a problem because it has such a large jurisdiction and it tends to lean left. And I think that they're upset about that. And if they get another court in there, that might reduce the power and the overall sort of the sway that the Ninth Circuit tends to have. So I saw that. That was an interesting article that I read. And so we'll see where that goes. They've tried that before, but I don't know whether it's going to work out. It's something to watch, though.
Yeah. Well, this podcast, I know it's been all over the map. We haven't. We really could have had a full podcast every day and had plenty to talk about because there's been so many topics. I mean, we didn't even get to some.
We could do this live. We could just run them every day and let people listen to them.
I'm telling you, this would be. We need a prep period just to do this.
From our standpoint, though, I mean, I'm intrigued by what this president's going to do. I hope that he does well, and I hope that we do well because of the measures that he puts in place. And I hope that he has intelligent, thoughtful things that he puts out there. And I think ultimately, I think he really does care about the country, but I question some of his methodology.
Well, as history teachers, we know sometimes things like this work out for the best. So 20 years down the line,
we'll look back and go,
well, that's actually a good thing. Now how that's
an else that spurs a lot of debate. The only thing that would bother me is if they silence the dissident or the critics and call them dissidents and then say, sorry, you can't say certain things and start eliminating people like he kind of threatened to do. So I'm a little curious to see where that goes, and if it does, that's definitely problematic. But if we can hold on and just have spirited debate openly and honestly and let each side kind of throw it out there and then find some ground in the middle to move forward. So maybe this is a progressive moment. We just don't realize it yet.
Right, maybe so.
We can try to be optimistic.
Let's end on this. Did you watch the Super Bowl?
I did.
I haven't talked to you about this yet.
Yeah.
We don't talk about sports much on here, but that Super Bowl was exceptional. Even
Even
if you're not a Patriot, and I know you weren't a Patriots fan, or you wanted the Falcons to win.
Well, and not that I cared really about either team, because I'm a Steelers fan, and they didn't go, and so I was sad about that. But I'm still kind of nursing that wound a little bit. But just the fact that Atlanta hadn't won one, and
what a weird game.
Yeah.
Did the Patriots come back and win it?
Yes.
Or did the Falcons just have collapsed?
Yes. Both of those things.
When there was like 9 minutes left, they were up whatever it was, 28 to.
Yeah, it was like a 25-point spread there.
There's 9 minutes left, and they snapped the ball with 25 seconds left on the game clock. And I'm thinking, whoa. Okay, you need to play the clock already because you've got, there's 3 scores they have to make in order.
I think they were way too confident. They got cocky and they laid down when they got tough. But I think, do you think that Brady qualifies as the greatest quarterback ever?
I now think he is the greatest quarterback to ever live. And right before the Super Bowl, I said, I think Montana is but I think this game.
Even with Deflategate, do you think that cancels out one of those wins?
Yeah, because there's so much, that one incident, I understand. I understand deflating the balls to try to gain an advantage, but there has been 1,000 examples of that same gamesmanship.
Right.
Pumping crowd noise in. Mm-hmm. I remember back in the day. What was his name? Okay, who's the old New York Giants coach? The guy. Can't think of his name.
The Giants? I don't know.
Well, Walsh. Remember that coach back for the Chiefs? Was it? I can't remember.
Joe Walsh.
Joe Walsh.
No, that's not right. That's the bad guy.
Okay, I can't remember his name.
Okay.
I'm gonna be mad after this is over with. But he acted like it was right before the game, and he acted like his headset was messed up. Mm-hmm. So he went to dude for the Giants, and he said, "Coach, our headsets aren't working." And he did that on purpose because he knew that they were doing everything through the headsets. And he had hand signals that he always used. He didn't really use the headsets as much. And this is like a championship game. And according to the rule book, if their headsets don't work, they have to take theirs off. It's just stuff like that. So Deflategate, I know it was a big deal.
No, I mean I just threw that there because people have said it, but I think that, and I like Brady. Okay,
yeah.
Deflategate or not, I'm not a huge fan of the Patriot organization just because I'm not a real big Belichick fan.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're good. And
is it 5 Super Bowls in 7 appearances? He's won 5 out of 7.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And to be on the
he's the only
10-yard line,
right?
Yeah, on the 10-yard line, and he's got to go down there and score. They lose.
And honestly, think about this too. They didn't really start winning as a team until he became their quarterback.
Right, and he was like a 4th-round pick, wasn't he?
He came in, yeah, and but instantly when he took over the helmsmanship there, they were on. I mean, they became because he became.
Yeah, he was like a robot out there. He's not the fastest guy. He's not the most athletic. He didn't have the best arm in the world, but he makes all the throws.
If you seen like the first half, I don't even know what was wrong with them. They just weren't clicking. Atlanta was in their heads maybe a little bit.
I thought
his receivers were dropping, but dude, they made some amazing. Yeah,
the speed of Atlanta. I thought, wow, these guys are younger. They're faster. It might be over. They might run away.
They were making acrobatic catches, and it was like all of a sudden
some of those catches,
like voodoo magic had landed on them, and everything worked for them in the second half. And you just kind of watched it fall apart, kind of like when Hillary lost the election. You kind of watched
That's exactly
watched it fall apart there.
All right, well, that is a great way to end it. This is History After Hours Season 2, sometime here in the spring of 2017. We will see y'all later. Goodbye.